Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Redwood Library in Athenæum in Newport, Rhode Island. I am Joe Rusnak, the Assistant Director of Programs. It is a pleasure to have you here for our first in a series of virtual lectures this season, generously sponsored by the Jazarmbach Family Foundation, Marianne, Mark, and Michelle Drum. Thank you very much. In ordinary times, we would be assembled here in the Harrison Room, but I am unfortunately here by myself due to, of course, these unusual times. But unusual circumstances cause for out-of-the-box thinking, which is how we are able to get our programming directly to you. So this is an uncharted territory for us, as it most likely is for you, but we hope that you do find each and every one of our lectures interesting. And if you would like a full list of lectures or our concerts, please feel free to go to our website, redwoodlibrary.org, and you can see what we have available and register for those events there. A couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. Because this is a relatively new system, and we occasionally have some audio snafus, if for some reason you are finding our audio or video buffering of some sort, we do have a couple of help options. One is up in the top, basically right on up here, I should say up here in your corner. You will see a thing that says options, and then right to the right, to the left of that, a small help button, and that should be really what gets you there. If that doesn't work, there's another get audio or video help towards the bottom left-hand side of the video. And if at any point in time you would like a full screen version of what is happening, feel free on the right-hand corner near the help, there's a small little box outline. Click that, and that'll give you a full screen. So now, I am certainly happy to introduce our speaker this evening, Gary Sullivan, who is no stranger here to the Redwood Library. Mr. Sullivan is a nationally recognized Americana specialist with particular expertise in the area of 18th century Rhode Island furniture and clocks. Last year, as you may have been aware, Mr. Sullivan was our guest curator for the Redwood Library's enormously successful Claggett Clock exhibition. He's a lecturer, author, exhibit curator, television appraiser with more than 40 years of experience. He also shares some of that experience on one of my personal favorite TV shows, Antiques Roadshow on PBS. Mr. Sullivan is based in Sharon, Massachusetts, and is an award-winning author, writing and contributing to several books, including Art and Industry in Early America, Rhode Island Furniture, with Patricia Kane and Dennis Carr and others, and Harbor and Home Furniture of Southeastern Massachusetts by Brock Jobe and Jack O'Brien and Gary Sullivan. With further ado, we present to you Gary Sullivan.
Thank you. It's great to be back at the Redwood, even if it's only virtually. This will be an unusual presentation tonight. In addition to showing images of some pretty great Rhode Island furniture, I'm also going to be talking about the values of some of these pieces, which is not typical. This was Redwood director Benedict Lecca's idea, so that's my disclaimer. But I think you'll find it interesting. I have about 50 slides to go through, so let's get started. So some great Rhode Island objects have come up in the last year and a half or so. They've come on the market, and I'm sure many of the Redwood Library members follow the market to some degree, or are at least interested in Rhode Island furniture. And so let's take a look. The last time we were together, we were doing this. As Joe mentioned, the Claggett exhibition last year was a great success, and it was a lot of fun for me. And we learned so much. Having all those Claggett and James Wadey clocks together in one place gave us an opportunity to compare the characteristics, the cases, the movements, and we learned a lot from that. Right off the bat, I'd like to acknowledge my colleague, Patricia Kane, who's the curator of American Decorative Arts at Yale University Art Gallery. And this is Patricia here examining the hood of one of the Claggett clocks last year at the Redwood. Her research on Rhode Island furniture has been ongoing for many, many years, and much of the scholarship that has come out in recent years is as a result of her work, including the book that I'm showing here, which I was very happy to play a small part in, but her Rhode Island Furniture Archive, which includes thousands and thousands of images of objects and descriptions, is an incredible resource. So several of the attributions that have come to light recently are the result of her work. One of the most significant things that happened in relation to Rhode Island furniture in the last year or so is that the Ralph Carpenter collection was sold at Christie's in New York this past January. And many of you, I'm sure, know who Ralph Carpenter was. He was the author of this book, The Arts and Crafts of Newport, Rhode Island, which he published in 1954. And this is still a solid reference book that I refer to all the time. In addition, Ralph was a great supporter of the Redwood Library and was a board member for many years. This is one of the pieces from his collection that was sold in January. It's a Queen Anne mahogany dressing table made in Newport, circa 1740 to 70. It's unusual for a Newport dressing table, or lowboy, as some people call them. It was larger than standard size. Rhode Island or Newport dressing tables of this form usually measure about 29 or 30 inches in width. This one was 36 inches wide. So it's almost the size of a high chest base. It was very impressive. Nice old surface, original brass. The slipper feet that Rhode Island collectors love. This foot I'm highlighting here on the left, that is very desirable to collectors of Rhode Island furniture. So this brought $81,250, which is a very strong price, but it has a brand new attribution to Christopher Townsend of Newport, and that is, again, based on Pat Kane's work. But some of the construction characteristics and the maker's inscriptions inside the piece, the maker's marks, indicate that this was done by Christopher Townsend. So, and that's the way some pieces are attributed today. The cabinet makers in the course of building a piece of furniture often number or letter things. They use symbols and slashes and various things in chalk or pencil. And then once you find a piece that has a solid attribution or it's signed, you can use those little marks and characteristics to assign his name or to other pieces. And I'm happy to report that this was bought by the Chipstone Foundation, so it will be available to the public. This is a pair of Queen Anne walnut side chairs that were also sold from Ralph Carpenter's collection. They descended in the Tillinghast family. They were possibly made by John Goddard in Newport, and they date to circa 1760 to 90. This is a sort of a classic Newport form, and I'm going to be showing slides of some chairs that are a little bit later than this, but this is a Queen Anne chair that has both a Queen Anne leg and a Queen Anne back. There were a lot of chairs made in Newport or in Rhode Island that have Queen Anne legs with Chippendale backs, and I'll point some of those out to you as we go. But this was possibly owned by Charles Tillinghast of West Greenwich, and this pair brought $37,500. And there was another pair with a similar history that brought $30,000. So good objects, good prices. I love this chair. It's a Chippendale cherry side chair from Newport, dates to circa 1780 to 1800. And this form is not uncommon, but this was a particularly great example. It had a wonderful old surface. The condition was amazing. The form was good. It has what Rhode Island furniture enthusiasts will recognize as stop fluted legs, where the upper part of the leg is grooved. It's fluted, and the lower part of the leg is kind of a raised bead that is along the same line as the fluting above. So that is something that we associate with Rhode Island, particularly Newport furniture. And this single chair brought $9,375, a strong price for a very nice object. Here's a pair of chairs of very similar form, but they are at a different level. These were possibly made by John or Daniel Goddard. They were owned by Christopher Champlin in Newport. They were made circa 1770 to 85. And these brought a very strong price of $68,750. And here's why. They're about as well carved or as extensively carved as you ever see a Chippendale Rhode Island chair. The carving on the backs, and particularly the crest rail, is really terrific. And so this attribution to John or possibly Daniel Goddard is based on the carving. There's a signed Daniel Goddard bureau table that has similar gadrooning, and this being the gadrooning here. And so the carving relates to some Goddard work. So that could be who made it, but a really, really wonderful pair of chairs. Here's a Newport slant-lid desk that was sold as part of the Carpenter sale. This was made in Newport, circa 1740 to 60. It sold well above the estimate at $15,000. Now it had some imperfections, but it's a great desk, and I think this was a very fair price, and I think you will too in a moment. That desk relates to this one. This is in the collection of RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, and this is the only known signed piece by Job Townsend Sr., and you can see the writing there tells you what the label says, made by Job Townsend in Newport. And that relates to this in terms of some quirky construction characteristics, but there's one feature that really ties them together. And it requires a little background to understand it. Desks of this, early desks of this kind sometimes have what we call a drop well in the interior. The writing surface inside the desk, and you can't see it here, slides open. There's like a panel that slides back, giving you access to what's in the top drawer while you have the desk lid open. And during this period, locks were very expensive. They were imported from England. And so Townsend developed a locking system for the top drawer whereby you could reach through that drop well and slide little wooden bolt type things in the front corners of the drawers. You could slide them over to engage with the case sides and lock that drawer from the inside. So you could close the lid, which has a brass lock that with a key, and you have effectively locked both the top drawer and the lid. So the construction and the way those locks were executed on these two desks tie them firmly together. So this is a brand new attribution to Job Townsend Sr., again, based on Pat Kane's research. Not everything brought a big price. These were some pieces in the Carpenter sale that I thought sold for very fair prices. The Chippendale high chest in the upper left with ball and claw feet, very nicely executed ball and claw feet, and a carved shell in the apron. That sold for $17,500. So not a high price, I don't think. Upper right is a very nice Pembroke table with the stop fluted legs that we associate with Rhode Island, and nice brackets on the legs. Sold for $5,000. I think that's fair. Lower left, we don't see too much federal furniture made in Newport, because the furniture making heyday had passed by the time we came to this period, when they were making circa 1800 or so. When they were making inlaid furniture, there was not much being produced in Newport or in Rhode Island, for that matter. But this is a nice demi-lune table with a nice inlay that sold for $5,250. And then the lower right, a Queen Anne side chair with a pierced splat that is a Rhode Island form. You find that splat on a number of Rhode Island chairs, and that one only brought $2,000. Very fair, I think. Probably the most significant sale of piece of Rhode Island furniture that's happened for quite a while is this piece, the Samuel Whitehorn high chest. It was made circa 1760. It was sold at Sotheby's a year ago, January 2019. It had a very conservative estimate of $150,000 to $300,000. And this was a masterpiece, a tremendous piece of furniture, very highly original Queen Anne brass hardware, very early historic surface, perhaps the original surface. It was just very clean with great slipper feet, tremendous carving. It had one little detail that's very unusual, but it was a very nice touch. Right here at the top of the leg, there's like a little tiny scroll right there that was just a sweet detail that I haven't seen before. And this piece sold for $543,000. It's a masterpiece of Rhode Island furniture. And this piece turned up last year as well. Somewhat similar. It dates to around the same time, 1755 to 75. This turned up in a little out of the way auction with an estimate of $200 to $400, not $200,000 to $400,000, but $200 to $400. And it sold for quite a bit more than that, but not at the level of the other one. But this is also a nice Newport high chest. Instead of having the slipper feet, this one has a cabriole leg with Queen Anne pad feet. But you can see the form is similar, the carved shell. There are the two side by side. So we find that high chests made in Newport sometimes have very, very similar cases, but the legs are the thing that vary. Here we have two different styles of legs made in Newport or in Rhode Island. In addition to this, some of them have ball and claw feet, like the high chest, flat top high chest that I showed a few minutes ago. So there's a nice comparison of two excellent Newport high chests. And there's a detail of the high chest on the right, the one that came up at the small auction, just to give you an idea of the quality of the wood. And this one has nice original brasses as well. And there's a third one, believe it or not. This came up at Christie's in January of this year, descended in the Gould family, similar form. The wood is perhaps not quite as exciting as the other two pieces, but a wonderful piece of furniture, also with the desirable slipper feet. This one had a stronger estimate of $300,000 to $400,000, and it did not sell, unfortunately. So on that day in New York in January, on that particular day, the audience was not in the mood at that level. But it's a great chest, as are the others, and to have three of these come up within a year, I think is pretty amazing. They're all wonderful. So let's give some love to Providence. This is a chair that belongs to the Chipstone Foundation. Prior to 1978, chairs of this form were attributed to Newport, to Providence, to Salem, Massachusetts, to Boston. People did not really know where they were made until a pair of them was published with the labels of John Carlyle and Sons, Providence. And so since then, we know who made them. This is a nice example with a nearly complete label in the Chipstone collection. A very nice example. Excuse me. Here is a pair that I had recently of the same form. It's fairly common to see chairs of this form. I think they were made by several different cabinet makers, and maybe in other places in addition to Providence. But here's a kind of a close-up of the carving, and they all look pretty similar to this. But that's a nice shot of what the carving looks like on chairs of this form made by a cabinet maker that we don't know. This is another one that I found recently. Prior to this, there were only 5 labeled examples known by John Carlyle and Son. This is the 6th, and there's a shot of the carving that was done in the shop of John Carlyle and Son. This one, as you can see, has a partially complete label, but the important part is there. We know who made it. I'm sorry I don't have a good overall picture of this chair, but you get the idea. This is another pair of similar form that they've had an interesting adventure, and so we'll talk about this pair a little bit. They were made for the John Brown House in Providence. They have excellent provenance. They're not perfect. They have some repairs. They sold in March 2012 for $8,295 against an estimate of $3,000 to $4,000. It looks like at that time they had a nice old surface. The seats were not exceptional and probably needed to be replaced, but they had nice color, and one problem that they had is that the feet are pieced out on the bottom. In other words, the bottom of the legs were cut off at some point and then subsequently restored. And you can see it a little bit right here. There's a line along about 1.5 inches up from the bottom. You can see a little bit here as well. But that's a significant hurt. In 2012, a repair like that was a problem, but maybe not as much as it is today. I think the provenance probably carried them, and the nice color in 2012. But this is what they look like now. They just came up at auction earlier this month at Brunk Auctions, and you can see better in this photo the line right here where those chairs are ended out or pieced out on the bottom. And in today's market, that is a bigger hurt than it was back then. The collectors are more particular than they used to be, and they just will not accept an issue like that. And this is what they look like today. They've been refinished. They've lost that wonderful color. They do have nice seats, but they were estimated $2,000 to $3,000, and they sold for only $1,353. And that's really because the legs are pieced out. It's not a reflection on the auction house, or the estimate. That's just what the buyers are willing to pay today because of the condition, and that's a trend. The buyers are more particular now than they used to be. Let's talk about some William and Mary furniture. This is a piece that Levy Gallery in New York has acquired, and it's attributed to the so-called Joiner D. It was made circa 1730, probably in Newport, Rhode Island, and it has one characteristic that helps us to associate it with Rhode Island. The ball feet have very long necks above them, and that is unusual. That's really a Rhode Island thing. Typically, a ball foot chest or piece of furniture would have a shorter neck above the ball, and so it would be up closer to the case. But these Rhode Island pieces are are really very successful, I think, when they're raised up on the ball feet like that. And here on the left, you see an image of the inscription. This is why it's attributed to Joiner D, because he made marks on the back of his drawers that sort of resemble a D. Whether it's an arc with a line or an attempt at a D is unclear, but that is that. There are a handful of pieces made by this same unnamed cabinet maker. We don't know who he was. And then on the right, you get an opportunity to see the ball foot with the long neck. Here's another spectacular piece of furniture. This was offered by Levy Gallery at the Winter Antique Show. It's a rare form. You don't find too many William and Mary day beds or couches, some would call it. And this one is has a very high degree of originality. And there's a look at the back. It was likely made in Rhode Island. The back relates to some chairs that were made sort of in the border region of Connecticut and Rhode Island. So it could very well be a Connecticut piece, but also it could be a Rhode Island piece. But it's certainly spectacular and worthy of your time this evening, I think. This is fabulous. It's the crest of a William and Mary side chair, spectacular with great old surface. This is from the so-called heart and crown tradition. You can see the inverted heart cut out in the center, and it could be made in Rhode Island. It could also be made in Connecticut. In fact, it's in some ways more likely that it's from Connecticut. But the crest does relate to some William and Mary chairs that have histories of coming from Little Compton, Rhode Island, and also it's similar to some made in Newport. And the similarity is in these this double arch crest here. So could be Connecticut, could be Rhode Island, but it's an amazing chair. This was offered at Sotheby's. It's from the collection of Barbara and Aaron Singh. It had a $6,000 to $8,000 estimate. It sold for $30,000. So I'm not the only person who loves this chair. It's really amazing. Dates to about 1735. Here's another piece of William and Mary furniture. This has a reattribution, again, based on Pat Kane and her work at Yale. This was made in Rhode Island, probably Newport. It's a William and Mary high chest from circa 1730. This came up at Sotheby's in 2018, actually, and was attributed to New York. And it does resemble in some ways some William and Mary high chests made in New York, but it has one characteristic that really ties it to Rhode Island, and a few that more loosely tie it. And the Rhode Island high chests from this period tend to have thinner than usual legs. Look how thin that leg is there and here, extremely thin. High chests made in other regions tend to have thicker legs. Also, you can see the long necks here above the ball foot. Again, that's a Rhode Island feature, but the most telling thing is up here, and it's difficult to tell in this photo, but these are separate boxes that are inlaid with the herringbone inlay. The inlay does not go across the top, that herringbone inlay. It's a panel here and a panel here. In fact, this is set up to look like 4 drawers. And here, in a very inartistic way, I've tried to point out the difference. The herringbone inlay goes in these square boxes with just a plain bit of maple veneer in between, and that's unusual, and it is a Rhode Island thing. Here's another one. Maybe you can see it a little better here. The brass configuration is different, but the top 2 drawers each have 2 distinct panels that are banded with herringbone inlay. You can see how delicate the legs are on this piece, and slightly less dramatic, but a long neck above the ball foot. This is a piece that is illustrated in Art and Industry, and the entry talks about these chests made in Rhode Island. This is a chair that is in the Newport Historical Society. So here's one with Chippendale legs and a Queen Anne back. Early on, I pointed out a chair with a Queen Anne shaped back with a pierced splat. This one has a solid splat with Chippendale legs. This is a chair that comes from a monumental set of 24 chairs. It was made circa 1750 to 70 and descended in the Hazard family of Narragansett, later in the Stevens family. A set of 24 dining chairs is all but unheard of. I've never seen a set that large. Usually they came in sets of 6, 8, 10, but not 24. And this has that Hazard family history. Well, here's another one that turned up this year. This is actually one of a pair. They came up at a small auction house. They did not sell for a lot of money. They sort of slipped through the cracks, but they are from the same set as the Newport Historical Society chair. And here is the proof. On the bottom of one of those chairs, it has this paper that says that it came from the Hazard House, built 1738, Boston Neck, Narragansett, Rhode Island, from the estate of George Stevens. So you have that Stevens family tie-in as well. And down below is a close-up of the carved shell on the crest rail of the chair, which is really wonderful. And as if the provenance did not tie them together well enough, that is the incised number on the seat rail of one of the chairs. Usually the cabinet makers put corresponding marks on the seat rail and the slip seat, the loose seat frame from each chair, so that they could easily be matched together. So this was chair number 23. So that really locks it in pretty well as being part of that set of 24. So that's a really neat discovery that happened this year. This is a pair of Chippendale side chairs attributed to John Townsend of Newport. They date to circa 1770. These were also offered in the Sing sale at Sotheby's, and these are very nice chairs. They brought $52,500. The attribution to John Townsend is based on 4 chairs that are nearly identical to these, 2 pair that descended in 2 different lines of John Townsend's family, one through his daughter's family and the other through his son's family. So I was fortunate to be able to buy those for a client at Sotheby's. This is a desk that was advertised in Magazine Antiques in 1962 by David Stockwell, and it kind of disappeared. But after an absence of nearly 60 years, it turned up this year at an out-of-the-way auction house, and there are some photos of it. Tremendous piece of furniture. Bonnet top desks and bookcases are not terribly common, particularly not as good as this. And you can see it's got a very nice interior, classic Newport interior. Here's a shot of the interior. So it has a block and shell carved prospect door here, which opens to 3 blocked drawers within, and that is flanked by these 3 scoop carved, these 3 scoop carved drawers and then block and shell carved drawers on the outside. So a great Newport interior to a terrific desk that has reemerged after a long absence. This is a Chippendale side chair made in Newport circa 1750 to 70. And here we have a Queen Anne back with a Chippendale ball and claw front leg. It's a transitional chair. This was sold in January at Keno Auctions, and it brought a price that I think is very fair. Brought $10,000. It was fair enough that I bought it. But it's a beautiful chair with tremendous carved feet, and you'll see my wording there. The battle rages on. There's a lot of controversy and ongoing discussion about, were these chairs made in Boston? Were they made in Newport? The fact is, I think they were made in both places, and sometimes it's difficult to tell whether they're Boston chairs or Newport chairs, but the fact is they're great. And when you look at a carved foot like that, it's exciting. There's the crest rail. This chair is probably made by John Goddard, but there may be some who would dispute that. But there's a nice carving on the crest rail. This was also sold at the Keno auction. There were several pieces of Rhode Island furniture sold there. This so-called porringer top table, it would have been called a tea table in its day. We call it a porringer top due to the shape of the corners. This form is relatively common. They made them in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, southeastern Massachusetts, and also in Connecticut. They're usually maple. And when you find one in mahogany, that's pretty special. This was a mahogany one. It was also oversized. It was much larger than they usually are, and it was just perfect. The condition was amazing. It brought a good strong price of $9,500. This may be a little difficult to see, but this is the underside of the table. At the top and bottom, these are the side rails. This is the underside of the top here. And here we have these battens on the left and right that actually pierce the rails, and they come out on the other side. And so these battens are nailed down into a notch in the top part of the rail here, and then they're nailed into the underside of the top. So it allowed the cabinet maker to attach the top to the base, to the rails of the aprons, without putting any fasteners down through the top, and without counting on glue blocks to hold it in place, because with a little shrinkage they would often break free. So this method of attachment was used by John Goddard and some others in Newport. This is a Rhode Island table and a very nice example. This is a clock with an interesting history. It was published in this John Brownhouse Loan Exhibition catalog, which was published in 1965. At that time, it was cataloged as a David Williams Newport clock, and it's really a superb banjo clock or timepiece, patent timepiece. There were not many of these made in Rhode Island. Most of them were made in Boston or other places in New England, but very few from Rhode Island. And the signature is a little faint and difficult to read. And David Williams was the most prolific of the timepiece makers in Rhode Island, and so I think it was assumed that he was the maker, and that's how it was cataloged. And then in 1998, it was sold at auction again as a David Williams clock, where it brought a record price for a Rhode Island timepiece or banjo clock, $52,500. Recent scholarship has determined that the name doesn't say David Williams. It actually says Job Wilbur, who was his apprentice. This was made circa 1823, and the case was probably made by John Young, who was a cabinet maker who provided cases to the Rhode Island clockmakers who were making this form. This was sold at Sotheby's in January as part of the Singh collection. It brought $32,500, which is a good, strong price today. The price that it brought in 1998 of $52,500 was really extraordinary, and it's a great clock, but that was a lot. It has a bit of an interesting story. In the spring of 1823, two things happened. First, David Williams died, and then 3 weeks later, his apprentice, Joe Wilbur, whose name is on this clock, reached his 21st birthday and age of majority. So he missed out on the last 3 weeks of his apprenticeship. And so he would have made this probably around 1823 when he first started working on his own. But it's interesting that the style of the case would be a little bit earlier. So it raises the possibility that Joe Wilbur was completing cases that were started by his master, or maybe he just continued making clocks and buying cases that were the same as what his master was using. But the lower glass panel is the Constitution's Escape is the name of the scene. It's a War of 1812 battle scene. So a very nice clock with an interesting story. This is a spoon strongly attributed to Peleg Whedon, a North Kingstown, Rhode Island silversmith. And he's an interesting character because he not only was he a silversmith, he apparently was a cabinet maker as well. Now, it's not unusual for silversmiths to also be clockmakers and vice versa, but a silversmith / cabinet maker is very, very unusual. And here are some pieces that were just purchased by the Wadsworth Athenæum Museum of Art, including some spoons attributed to Peleg Whedon, and this wonderful Pembroke table, also attributed to him, which has a history that would date it to 1791. It's believed he made it for his father-in-law in that year. It came along with an extensive manuscript collection of the Fowler, Whedon, Whiteman family, and this history of and the silver, the manuscripts, and the table have all descended right through the family, and with the capable assistance of Connecticut antiques dealer Arthur Liverant, Wadsworth Athenæum was able to buy it and add it to their collection this year. So, it's also interesting to note that Winterthur has the account books of Peleg Whedon. So I suspect that there will be more to come on this story down the line, because this is a very interesting situation. And the construction characteristics of this table are quirky enough that one could believe that they were made by a craftsman with a very good eye and some skill, but maybe not formal training in the way of cabinet making. So very interesting story. I know you're all asking, what are you doing next, Gary? Well, here it is. My next project will be an exhibition of Connecticut tall case clocks, great ones, at the Wadsworth Athenæum in Hartford sometime next year. The dates have been messed with a little bit by coronavirus, but at some point we will be having an exhibition of really terrific clocks. And this is my co-curator, Brandy Culp, who is the curator of American Decorative Arts at the Wadsworth. So look for that sometime next year. And that's about all I have to say. So back to you, Joe.
Well, thank you very much, Gary. I want to thank you guys for coming in and basically joining us in our first virtual lecture. Gary, I want to thank you for joining us. We did have a couple of questions while you were going about. First off, everyone wanted to say hi, Gary. And yeah, one of the questions I think by J.J. Sullivan was answered, and it was, I believe, one of the chests you were talking about. It went for a lower price, and I think you answered it. It was kind of it's the market right now. People are being a little more focused on what they're purchasing.
The fact is that the great objects will seek their own levels, and the great pieces, if they're in great condition, usually will find a home. It's a different market. There are still collectors that are very aggressively buying, and they're looking for interesting things, but the condition really has to be it has to be good. They're, as I mentioned earlier, they're more particular about condition, and at auction they like the estimates and reserves to be low, and that seems to draw in the buyers and get them interested, and they may chase it to a higher level, but they like to start off with a piece that's conservatively estimated.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, Gary, I was purely amazed with the Claggett Clock exhibition. I had a chance to help you and, of course, John Bartosh, our maintenance man here at the Redwood Library, set that up. I, for one, look forward to the 2021 Connecticut exhition.
It's going to be better.
Well, that's maybe not better, but it'll certainly be something to see. So, folks, if you were still logged on, definitely keep an eye out for that in 2021. Gary, I want to thank you again for joining us. And for those of you who enjoyed this lecture, go to our website, redwoodlibrary.org, and take a gander at what we have coming up. On behalf of the Redwood Library staff, again, my name's Joe Rusnak. Gary, thank you again, and thank you guys.
Thank you for having me.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.